Minister, I've spoken to your colleague, Minister McGrath, who I understand is back in his spiritual home of Cuba as we speak, in relation to rural GP services. And you know it from your area, we have to change the offer, and we have to make the offer far more attractive to GPs to come and work in areas. And we also have to support our existing GPs. Since I raised the issue a few weeks back, I've been inundated with calls from all over the country by existing GPs who are about to throw in the towel because of the pressure they're under and the lack of backup and lack of understanding. So I'd ask you not to give me the standard answer about the GMS contract, because that's not good enough anymore. We need a whole new response and a whole new focus, and maybe you have to involve your ministerial colleague in the Department of Community and Rural Affairs in this as well.
For the question, and look, the standard answer is you know what you don't want it, but the standard answer is the contract is very central to the negotiation or to the future of GP practice. Whether we like it or not, the existing contract is there since the 1971 or 2, so the renegotiation of that contract is a very central piece to the development of GP practice into the future. We have invested and have significantly increased the GP allowance for rural practices in the last number of years, but there are still a lot of pressures on the GP practices, and I take your point that it won't be the contract renewal alone will solve all of those issues. A lot of it has got to do with the implementation of Sláintecare and how we reduce the reliance on GPs and how we better manage the practices, and things like nurse-led practices and nurses seeing more people is going to be a feature of GP practices into the future to make sure that we can make sure that they're sustainable. The increase in training places for GPs is very significant. I think it's up to 193 this year. It is a big percentage increase, and I don't have it to hand, on training places for GPs, and that's going to help for the availability, because that's a big issue for GPs as well, as getting replacements when they're under pressure and can't manage when they need time off and rotas and rosters. Yep. Calleary.
The contract is crucial, and it's absolutely crucial that you finalise the discussions immediately. You met 500 GPs outside the gates here recently, and they're fed up. They're about to walk away. You speak about an increase in training places, and yet that's welcome, but the irony is those places aren't being taken up. And I'd love to see the figures, because for the first time in the West of Ireland training scheme in recent years, there have been vacancies. What was seen as a great career is no longer seen that. So actually, unless you address the core issue of why it's not an attractive profession, you speak about the increased GP allowance, but it hasn't kept up with costs. Cost of insurance, cost of equipment, demand on patients, and it hasn't kept up with rural depopulation in terms of the ability of a GP to make an income from their existing list. So that allowance has to be changed. You're going to have to start going back to the way it used to be done, providing a surgery, providing the ongoing facilities for somebody to locate in, so that the financial model is completely changed. And most of all, Minister, you cannot allow a situation to continue where GP vacancies are advertised and there's no respondents. Surely that in itself is a wake-up call to the government. We have a problem with GPs. Unless you act, you also have to provide a better on-call service, better backup for on-call for rural GPs. There are a range of issues that are being long-fingered, and while you're long-fingering them, there is a flight from the profession.
Minister? And the on-call issue is a huge issue for rural GPs, and that is one of the biggest stressors, I think, in the amount of which they don't have to do in more built-up areas. They don't have that same demand on them as they do have in rural areas. The number I gave there may not be correct, but I'll get it for you on the training places. That's just coming from my head, so I can't rely on my head. So I'll come back to you with the exact number, but it's a significant increase in training places. But I take your point that if they're not being filled, we have to make sure that they're being filled as well to continue the flow of people. We're aware of the stresses that are on rural GPs, and as you acknowledged in your own contribution, I am a rural GP and know many GPs who have brought these issues to my attention. I'm sure my colleague, your colleague as well, Michael Murphy-Manny, and indeed Michael Collins, are well aware of those issues as well from rural areas. But the GP contract there is a significant investment attaching to the renegotiation of the rural GP contract, and I think that will address and go a long way towards addressing some of the issues that are very significant to them. And the work practices has to be looked at, as I said already in my first contribution, which we will do as well, and we will continue to engage, of course, with the representative bodies on the wider range of issues that are affecting GPs in rural areas in particular.
Thanks, Minister. Look, I appreciate you're aware of it, but do something about it. The contract talks are going on longer than Brexit talks, and it seems to be easier to resolve Brexit than get resolved GP contract. And I specifically mentioned the case of Bangor in my own constituency, where the position is being advertised. It was advertised previously and there was only one applicant. And a local solution is being put forward, and we're engaging with the HSE, and they're going to have to engage with that local solution. And I'd ask you, as Minister for Primary Care, to give your attention to the Bangor situation. All of the political representatives from the constituency are working collectively on it. We cannot allow a situation where the people of Bangor are left without a GP again because of people sticking their head in the sand when a local solution is on offer. But Minister, this is urgent. We are losing very good and very qualified people to Canada, to Australia, to the USA because of something small. There are small things that can be done to fix this problem and to make GP an attractive career again, to provide an essential rural service. But Minister, we cannot long finger the contract negotiations any longer than you have.
Conclude, please.
Yeah, look, nobody would like to see the contract negotiations brought to conclusion more than myself or Minister Harris over in the Department of Health or any of the other ministers on this side of the House. But as you will appreciate, Deputy, there are two sides involved in the negotiations. It isn't just within the government's remit to end the negotiations because both sides have to reach satisfaction, and the IMO, who are the representative body of the doctors, have to also get agreement from their members to agree up the line. So we are very, very anxious to see it concluded. We are prepared to put the additional significant resources that are required to bring it about, but there are a lot of issues that are still being teased out by both sides, and it takes two, as I say, two to tango, but two to agree as well. And we really want to see agreement as a government, as you do across the thing, and I don't think there's any political disagreement or difference between any sides of the House on the whole issue of GPs and GP contracts, and indeed the sustainability. It is one area of medicine that works very, very well, is the primary care sector, is the GP practices, and they are crucial to any rural area and urban area for that matter, and delivering a superb service. So we obviously recognise their value and want to see it recognised, and I will take an interest in your own area and quite happy to see if there's anything can be done in the Bangor area that you refer to me there as well.
Very much. Question 39 is Dara Calleary's as well. Deputy Calleary, just to introduce, maybe, and the Minister may have time.
I'll let the Minister respond.
Minister, Deputy number 39.
I don't have it here, so can you give it to me?
Actually, Deputy McLaughlin's.
Deputy McLaughlin's not here. So it's number 39. To ask the Minister for Health the initiatives in place to improve dental services in County Mayo, and if he would make a statement on the matter.
Thank you. I'm looking at 39.
Because I don't have, we didn't.
39, yeah. So
I'll have to come back to the Deputy on it because I don't have
We have been inundated with representations from constituents, particularly parents with teenagers who are being made wait for inordinate times for orthodontists and basic assessment services. And again, this is an area where early intervention is going to save a huge amount of pain, physical pain, but also financial pain down the line. And unfortunately, the waiting lists seem to have gone beyond the 2-year mark. And what we need is a very specific intervention in the county to reduce those waiting lists. Again, I've made the point previously, rather than sticking into CHO areas, can we not have a range of professionals that can be moved around to where there are waiting lists that have gone out of sync and address waiting lists that have gone way above the national profile? Rather than continue to adhere to geographical rules, let's address where there is a very specific problem. And in terms of dental treatment and orthodontic treatment, particularly for under 18s, we have a big problem there.
okay.
the Deputy on that issue.
Okay.